Sawadee krab. Good morning to everyone. So thank you so much for coming. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. And just a quick introduction about who I am. We have already been talking with some of you informally. But what we do is, as Scale Up Academy, we promote supporting organizations, entrepreneurship players, to promote their scale-up ecosystems, to design policies and to implement programs to support the scale-up ecosystem. And we also work directly with the scale-up companies through workshops. So that's a quick version about what we do. So again, I think that I already know the audience. I got your names yesterday in the evening, and today I had the opportunity to discuss a little bit with you. So I think that I have some context. Please feel free to interrupt me, no worries, and ask questions if there is something that you would like me to go deeper, because it would be a short amount of time to talk about so many things that are important. So I will try to summarize some of them, and maybe we can lose some detail which could be important. So please feel free to interrupt and say, look, go again on that point, and please go a little bit deeper. So let's start about what is a scale-up. So a scale-up is an enterprise with an average annual growth in employees or turnover greater than 20% per annum over a 3-year period and with more than 10 employees at the beginning of the period. So this is a scale-up. There are another definitions. There is the OECD definition who says that a scale-up is a company, or the European definition to a company with over who has a turnover over $500K US, or who has raised $1 million US in revenue from venture capital. This is another kind of definition. And then there is another theoretical definition, which is a scale-up is a company who achieved product market fit. And again, product market fit is a very intangible concept. It could be the first 10 clients, it could be the first $1 million US in revenue, or it could be the kind of, I found out the business model which makes me a profitable machine, and now it's time to scale it up. So typically, I like the number of employees tiers, and maybe I will use the whiteboard, because it is when we are growing the number of employees that the complexity in the company increases. So, right, so in the beginning it's 3 or 4 founders or 2 founders, it depends, or a solo founder, and then it's getting until 10. And I would say there are some interesting metrics. Only 4% of the companies, of all companies, surpass the $1 million US in revenues. 4%, I will repeat. Only 4% of all companies surpass the $1 million US in revenues. So a kind of a potential definition of what is product market fit. So only 4%. Then only 0.4% surpass the $10 million US in revenues. And then less than 0.04%, the 100 million. And the number is 0.018. So which shows that starting up, we already know the metrics, at least 90% die, so 10% survive, only 4% reach the 1 million. So this is the numbers that we are talking about. What is the interesting fact about this? Is that these 4% of the companies are responsible for the major impact on job growth and GDP growth, which means that there is a segment inside this 4% who creates 50% of all job growth and all GDP growth, which means that we have all 52 weeks to work, right? 8 hours or a little bit more, it depends on your daily jobs and your daily commitments. So which means that you can't do everything. So the way if you allocate your time and your resources and your budget to a certain segment, this is the segment that you will get more results on the short term. Startup game is a game for long term. We all know about stories of entrepreneurs who took 15 years, 20 years to find out a scalable business model. And they got very difficult times in the first 5, 10 years at least. There are exceptions, when we are talking about venture-backed businesses, we are really talking about the Champions League of startups, which means that these companies are trying to go from 0 to 10 million in 7 years, 10 years at least. So it's always a decade. So if you start at 30, you will get there at 40. It is very improbable that you will do it in the first time, so which means that you start a company at 20, you will get the first failure at 25, maybe at 30, if you are persistent enough. You will do another iteration, start another company, maybe second. Maybe you need to try 5 or 10 times. So, and if you think that you would be working until the 70 years old, let's aim. You have from 20 to 70, you have 50 years, so which means that you have 5 attempts or 10 attempts if you start a company every 5 years. And of course, then you will have a family and your own commitments, and you are less open to risk. So this is the game where we are in. This is really, 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 really difficult. And it is a pity that all these entrepreneurs take 10, 15 years to find out, or 2, 3, 4, 5 companies to find out a company that can scale, and then they screw it up again. Why? Because they never scaled a company. And the skills that they need to scale a company or to start up a company are completely different. On the startup, we need to do everything ourselves. We need to find solutions. On the scale-up, we need to do very few things. The mindset is completely different. We need to have a team around you. We need to surround us with the right people to find a talent pool. We have scaled companies before. So it's a completely mindset. It's just one thing that we need to do every 90 days. And typically in a startup, you know, we need to do everything. We need to take the coffee, we need to make the reception, take the phone. So think about the strategy, go to meet the clients, to meet the employees, pay the salaries. So everything. So let's go to some metrics, and now not global metrics, but British metrics from the UK. So very few startups survive and grow, as we have discussed it. UK businesses that started in 1998, 10 years later. All businesses that started with at least 1 employee, so 200,000. Businesses that survived in 2008, 10 years later, survived, which means that they are still alive. They also cannot have revenues in some cases. 37.5%. Survivor with 10 or more employees in 2008. Another definition of the scale-up, over 10 employees. 3.9%. 10 years later, 3.9%. So which correlates with the metrics that I was talking about, the 4%. So of course, there will be countries that will be 3.5, and others 5.5, and others 2%. It depends a little bit, but these are the average numbers. Survivors that achieved at least 1 year of high growth. And high growth is over 20% of growth after $1 million or after 10 employees, 2.7%. So if we decide just to work with companies who are over $10 million revenues, we are working with 0.4% of the companies. And we are having the higher impact on GDP growth, on job growth. What I'm saying is we will not give up supporting the startup ecosystem. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to take decisions about the way we allocate our time and our financial resources in order to promote the ecosystem. Why? Because this is a virtuous cycle. We need to have the corporates, we need to have the government, we need to have the supporting organizations, we need to have the startups, we need to have the scale-ups, we need to have the incubators, the science parks, everyone working together. And what will happen is that the scale-ups would be much more keen to invest and to buy service from startups than corporates, because corporates, we are still, in the majority of the ecosystem, educating them to collaborate with startups. And what happens a lot, it is a lot of frustration involved in the process, because corporates are too big and startups too small. It's too risky for both of them. The startup will die until the corporate decides. The corporate will look to the startup and say, maybe you will die until I take the decision. So it's it's almost a game that it is not a win-win game. So which works much better, and this is another point, for corporates, is to work with scale-ups. And the scale-ups can support the startups. And that's what is missing in the majority of the ecosystems globally, is the scale-up segment. Nobody is looking to the scale-up segment. Of course, with the exception of some cases like the UK that is working for a lot of years already in this segment.
Question here.
Yeah.
For over 90% of the companies that fail in the first few years, usually in, let's say, the UK or in the European, is there some sort of formal assistance to help those 90% who fail coming back into the game quickly or formally or?
Yeah, that's one of the main discussions is how do we change the mindset towards failure, and how we create regulation who helps entrepreneurs who fail, who get bankrupted, and sometimes their own personal financial situation that they can't get even a credit card or a debit card because they are bankrupted, to start again. Because they are the right people to start the second and the third time, because they should have learned a lot from the first failure. And that's okay. And a lot of times, in a lot of countries, yet, it's very difficult for an entrepreneur who fails the first time to go for the second time. So I would say this is a very an important policy that the governments should think about improving the regulation, about helping people to start again and not being seen as criminals, as in the majority of the countries. So,
Programs like that in place already?
yes. For instance, also to start the company, so the tax level in the first years, because you are not getting any revenues. You can't pay social security, insurance to accomplish all the obligations of the system to run a company. It's impossible. It's a nightmare. And that's what we were discussing in the opening ceremony yesterday of Startup Talent. We need to make it easy to anyone to start up a company, to close a company, and to start up again after the bankruptcy. So in terms of policies, that's our job, is almost to do things in a way that is, all the process is very easy. It's the same as we teach on the acceleration programs to the scale-ups. Turn the process of the customer easy. For us, our customer are the entrepreneurs, right? So we need to we need to look to the different touch points of the process and make every single step easy. And it's all the experience as entrepreneur. And again, since you go to the primary school, since you go to the secondary school, we need to look to the entire life cycle to support each touch point. And again, it's about prioritization, as we were talking with scale-ups, startups, corporate investors, etc. It's okay, what is the most important bottleneck that I need to solve in the next 90 days? I have identified 10 or 20 bottlenecks. What is the most important that I should start with? And then we plan 4 bottlenecks for the next 52 weeks, 1 for the first 13 weeks, second for the next 14 weeks, and we keep running it until the moment. It will never happen. It also happens with businesses that are very big. We will keep always improving the experience of the client. It will never end. But then we will get much more competitive towards another economies, and maybe we will start attracting entrepreneurs who will look to our ecosystem as a much better, friendly ecosystem to start up a company and to scale up a company. And that point, I think it's quite good, is when people are looking to us because they believe we are the best country to start our business or to scale up our business. Did it help? Or addressed your questions? This was what I was talking about. A minority of startups account for a large share of jobs and GDP growth. And this is an interesting correlation. Countries with more competitive economies have lower startup rates, which means that countries with better ecosystems, with more developed ecosystems, have much more scale-ups than startups. Interesting. Counterintuitive again, especially in a time that in all ecosystems we need to start up. All right, but how do we have international companies, international successes? It's not a company which is in a city or which is in a country that is well known, that is our flagship outside, that will help another companies to expand. Because you know about Tencent or Alibaba or, okay, when I go to a country, oh, you are from the country of this company, so you should be very good. So it's just a perception. It doesn't mean nothing, right? But we are humans, and we take decisions based on perceptions, not on reality. That's how it works. So the international evidence is clear that a small number of high-growth firms are vital to driving job growth and overall economic growth. For instance, 6% of UK businesses with the highest growth rates generated half of the new jobs created by existing businesses between 2002 and 2008. So 6%. This is really impressive, again. If more and more local firms grow more and more rapidly, prosperity is easier to achieve and sustain. So typically the solution that we are trying to, or the problem that we are trying to solve, the question that we are trying to solve is to help grow more and more new firms. And what we should think about the question is how to help more firms get new growth. And usually what I see a lot, and we have done it ourselves in Europe, is to do a lot of missions with startups to get to know markets worldwide. But the startup is trying to find product market fit. And who are the ones who would pay when you are trying to achieve product market fit? The ones who know you, because you don't have products, you don't have almost nothing. You have your own legacy, your own reputation, and that's what the company sells. In the beginning, it's the entrepreneur. It's not the idea, it's not the product. Of course, it needs to have some credit, but it's the person, it's the founding team, it's the network, it's the connections, it's the trust. If I have any problem, I know that this product is not perfect, this service is not perfect, but if I have any problem, I know that I have your number and that you will pick up my call and you will meet me and you will solve the problem. Or you will apologize and find out a solution and pay me back the money that I paid for the product and the service. It's about trust, only trust. So which means that when we are going to another country, what happens? We don't have network. We don't have reputation. Nobody knows us. We don't have case studies to show. So is it the right time to do international missions with startups? Of course it is important to open their minds to see another realities. But again, in terms of results, it's super long term. They will leverage these skills and this knowledge 10 years later. But in the short term, it's completely unsustainable, as the majority of the startup programs and policies are unsustainable. I have already talked a little bit about the why. It is maybe my first point, it's the why, and then I will go, when you are convinced that this is the reality, I will go to the next step, is how we support scale-ups. And finally, I will show you some examples of what we have done to support scale-ups. I would say this would be the agenda today. Why, how, and benchmarks, right? I think that's more than enough for the entire morning. All right, scale-ups are more productive. So, by the way, let me ask the question. Do you think that the startups are more productive or corporates? What is more productive? I mean, what is the turnover divided by the number of employees? This is the measure of productivity in a company. So do you think that the corporates are more productive or the startups are more productive? Who thinks that the corporates are more productive? Nobody? Who thinks that startups are more productive? Something is happening here because we just have 3 people thinking that startups are more productive. So I will repeat the question again. So Who thinks that corporates are more productive? Nobody. I will repeat. Corporates are more productive. 0. Who thinks that startups are more productive? All right. All right. Okay, there is some of you that are betting that I'm saying scale-ups then next. You are right. It's the right answer. But yes, it's counterintuitive again. Corporates are more productive than startups because they have economies of scale. So which means that the revenue per employee is higher on corporates than it is in startups, and it is higher in scale-ups than what it is in startups. It is even higher in corporates than what it is in scale-ups. It's, again, counterintuitive. It's not what we think in general. So scale-ups are more productive than startups. Corporates are more productive than scale-ups. Scale-ups create more jobs. Scale-up jobs are high quality. We all know about the talent war that is on scale-ups, on the scale-up side, all the perks that they give to employees, all the perks that they give even to providers, to customers, the way they treat the customers, et cetera, et cetera. We all know about the best practices in scale-ups. And that's why it's much easier to scale up to attract talent than for a startup, of course, but even for a corporate. This is very, very interesting, because usually the corporate world is still associated with a very boring job, with a command and control way of managing the business. And everyone nowadays wants a little bit more of freedom, autonomy, to be empowered, to do your own thing, and to be entrepreneurs inside the company, to be intrapreneur. So scale-up jobs are high quality. Scale-ups are innovative and international. Why? Because they have found product market fit, and now the goal is how we scale it up. Scale-ups are across all sectors. This is another myth, which is we need to support only venture-backed tech companies. There are scale-ups who fit in that criteria. Let's go to the beginning. A scale-up is an enterprise with average annual growth in employees or turnover greater than 20% per annum over a 3-year period, and with more than 10 employees at the beginning of the period. So there are companies who are scale-ups who are not tech companies. Scale-ups come from all industries. Nowadays, we are talking everywhere about the Industry 4.0. These are manufacturing companies, food companies, textile companies, retail companies, who can be scale-ups, not only tech companies. And they have the same kind of issues. They have less scalable business model. True. It's much more difficult to scale a textiles company in 10 years to 100 million US dollars in revenue than to scale a tech company. And the economies of scale are not so big. I mean, if we put in, if the revenues increases, the costs will increase close to the tax or to the percentage of the revenues in the case of the more traditional scale-ups. In the tech companies, the difference is with an amount of the revenues, the amount of costs will increase much less than in traditional industries. Did I explain it well, or should I rephrase this? Was it clear? Yes, no? All right. Let's imagine that we increase 10 million in revenues. What happens to a tech company? Maybe you will increase the costs in 2 million. What happens in a non-tech company? Maybe you will increase the costs in 5 million. So, which means that this is more scalable and the profit is much higher as much as you grow than in non-tech companies. Because you are much more employee intensive, stock intensive, so we need much, your costs will go much more up than in a tech company. But both are scalable. One is more scalable than another. So both are scale-ups, and when we are thinking about scale-ups, we need to think about all verticals, also the non-tech verticals. Whoops, still working. All right, let me see the last point. Scale-ups are diverse. Why? You know, there is all these policies about diversity, inclusion, that you need to have all the genders, all the nationalities in your management team, in your founding team, in the different teams, because it helps to be more creative, more innovative, to have different angles about a certain reality, and usually the solutions and the service that we provide to the clients, and even the culture that we have inside the company to the employees is much better than a company that is only one nationality or one gender or one way of thinking. So, and typically these companies are really aware that they need to have the right culture, because again, it's so difficult to work in a scale-up or even in a startup, we know. Because again, we are trying to do what usually the businesses do in 50 years, in 7 to 10 years. So it's an authentic roller coaster, as in the startup stage, as in the scale-up stage. Because we need to keep adapting the systems. Again, and that's what I was starting to say, and then I forgot in the beginning of the workshop. So this is one of the stages of growing a company, right? 1 to 10 employees. So let's start scaling up. We need to go from 11 to 25 employees. This is a challenge. The way you are running the business in this stage or in this is completely different. You start having functions. You start having another leaders. Here, it's just a leader with good helpers. So it tells, do this, do this, do this. You are in on the same room. You talk with everybody. Communication is easy. Systems are chaotic, but it works. 11 to 25, it's a little bit more difficult to have the 25 people aligned with everything that is happening in the business. And remember, from 11 to 25, things are always changing still from week to week. In a startup, it's from 30 minutes to 30 minutes. Right? From 11 to 25, it starts being maybe from 2 days to another 2 days. It changes a little bit the way we sell, the way we produce, the way we align ourselves. And then you go from 25 to 50 employees, sorry. So you start having a management team. You start having functions. So marketing, sales, finance, operations, product, engineering. And maybe if we think that each leader manages 5 people effective, to get to 50, you need 10 leaders. To get to 25, you need 5 leaders. Here again, you need 1, 2 leaders, the founders, right? Next stage, 50 to 100. In 100, you need 20 leaders managing teams of 5. Maybe you can have a company that you are managing 7, 8 maximum. Then it's very difficult. I would say this is the limit, and this is one of the reasons why startups don't scale and why small businesses don't become mid-sized businesses, because the owner can't get out of control, because he has suffered so much in the first 5 to 10 years. He has seen so many people join and leave because they have their own families. They are not committed with the business, that they don't trust everybody at the end of 5 or 10 years. So how can they delegate to people in the next stage of the business? It's one of the main difficulties. Again, do you remember doing everything, and then when you go from 11 to 25, you can't do everything. It will be completely your failure. This is one of the reasons why the businesses don't scale. Why worldwide, 99% of the companies are micro enterprises. So again, sometimes we are looking to the wrong problem. And it's very difficult to say this when we are promoting an event and we are invited for an event which is called Startup Talent, right? I know it's difficult, but again, it's very important, startup talent. But it's also important, scale-up talent. And I think it's already what is happening in some countries. For instance, Amsterdam, which is the capital of the Netherlands, is changing the name from Startup Amsterdam to Scale-up Amsterdam. Where I come from, Portugal, the second largest city, which is Porto, Lisbon is the capital. The city, the municipality created Scale-up Porto, never created Startup Porto. And the size of the ecosystem in Porto is much smaller than the one in the UK, much smaller, no comparison at all. And then you need to go from 100 to 250. And here, with 250, you need 50 leaders. And again, it would be ideal that you have leaders who have scaled up companies before. But if we don't have scale-ups, how do we find the talent pool to scale up a business? Again, we need to have different generations. We'll screw up scaling up to be successful at scaling up. What can we avoid? What can we do to avoid the process, to make the process less painful? The same thing that we do with startups. Having incubators, having accelerators, we'll teach them what others did wrong and what they can do a little bit right. There is not a magical formula. Nobody has a formula how to go from 0 to 100 million in 7 to 10 years. We have best practices. We have things that will increase the probabilities of getting success. It will not take out the pain. It will not take out the failure. What we can do is to increase a little bit the success rate. And again, it's counterintuitive again. To increase the success rate, we need to increase the failure rate. As much as we fail, as much will be right. And again, this is completely counterintuitive, because now we say, okay, let's work with scale-ups, which means that now we'll be much more successful. No, we look to the metrics. You'll be much more unsuccessful. But one company, for instance, PayPal, and let me try to find the slide about PayPal. So you would be completely surprised with what happened in US, in Silicon Valley, with PayPal. An ecosystem as the Silicon Valley, what is the impact of a PayPal? Let me see if I have internet. They call it PayPal Mafia. You see? Just a minute, please. Oops. Are you able to see? It's difficult, but I will tell you. These are the different companies that the management team of PayPal has created. So as you know, PayPal has IPO'd. So it's been the success, the kind of Champions League, the kind of exception, outlier in the world. Each of the founding members of PayPal have created YouTube, Yelp, LinkedIn, Tesla, Kiva, Slide. Even one of them started 500 startups, the most well-known accelerator, one of the most well-known accelerators in the world in Silicon Valley. So Peter Thiel has the Founders Fund in the US and has also started Palantir and so on. You see, one unicorn, one IPO, the management team who created one IPO has created next another 10 or 15 unicorns. Isn't this impressive? Isn't this about real impact? Just one founding team. Why? You guess why? Because they have done it before. They are much more prepared to the next stage. And then each of the ones who helped the CEO of PayPal to create a huge success wanted to create their own successes and start again with new teams. And some of them became founders of new businesses who became again unicorns. So let's go back to the presentation. So I think that PayPal is the perfect example of the impact of the scale-up has in the economy. So I think that, let's say, also what is the employee experience? Of the employees surveyed in these high-growth companies who had joined the company from another employer, 80% stated that they were satisfied or very satisfied with their current job compared to 46% when about asked with their previous job. Why? Because they are much more competitive and they need to offer a much better experience also to their employees. And that's why we listen, for instance, Jack Ma always talking about customer first, employee second, shareholder free. Do you see the message? It's always the same message. Jack Ma says always very simple things, which is incredible, but very wise things. He doesn't talk too much. He always tells a story and gives you a single message. And that's why he's a scale-up leader, now a corporate leader, of course, because he just wants one goal. He just has one goal. When he goes to a press conference, he just has one goal, to pass a message. It's not 10, 20, 15 ideas, 30 ideas, it's just one idea. And then how to translate this one goal in the best way possible with a good story that will be effective in the communication. And that's why he's also a very good communicator, because it's always saying the same thing in a different angle, always the same thing. Again, I could summarize the thoughts of Jack Ma in this: customer one, employee second, and shareholder third. So, kind of a summary and wrapping up about why scale-ups are important, to then go to how to promote a scale-up ecosystem. Scale-ups can be of all ages. Many are second and third generation. Scale-ups can be from all sectors, most in basic industries. This is another. Of course, the amount of non-tech scale-ups is much higher than the ones in tech scale-ups. If you look to the number of Thai venture-backed tech companies who are post-Series A, I would say that the metric is not much more than 20, 30 maximum. There is a report, I have read it, don't know the number, but I have this study over there. So which shows that if we are working just with 30 companies, it would be difficult. We can have a huge impact again, but if we work with the non-tech world too, we'll have a much higher impact. And it will be much more inclusive also for the ecosystem, because what happens in the most ecosystems in the world too is that there is a tech world, there is the non-tech world, and the non-tech world thinks that the tech world is crazy. And the tech world thinks that the non-tech world is crazy too. And they will die. So one thinks you are unsustainable, you raise money, it is impossible, this is not the right way, I've made my business, it was difficult, I've never raised money, and so on, I completely bootstrapped, etc., etc. And the tech world says, you guys are playing so small. You are growing so badly. Your kind of management, your management style is so old. You see the conflict? So if we are working with both segments, we are also creating a much more inclusive and connected ecosystem. And the virtual cycle will also work. Because in a certain stage of all these policies that we are applying, and we saw the same in Europe, you will start having a kind of revolution, a silent revolution in the sense that the non-tech world will start again criticizing all the money, all the resources, all the time that is being invested in startups. with very few resources. And that's the problem. To make something work as a business, we need a commitment with 10, 20, 30 years. It's 2 third generations. And usually, as human beings, after 5 years, we want to start working on a new challenge. So how do we assure that we have a commitment for the next 3 decades? The long-term strategy. Only, as we do in the company, let's always do this analogy, only involving everyone in the process, that everyone buys, everyone believes that this is the right direction. That's the only way. If it is just the boss direction and the employees don't buy the vision, they will not execute. Scale-ups grow sporadically. Quantities of local scale-ups lead to quality of local startups. Again, the scale-ups are much more willing to buy from startups because they have been startups themselves. They know how difficult it is. When more local firms grow more rapidly, sustained prosperity is more likely. Sustained regional economic health requires scaling up of local firms. So again, the key reasons why companies are unable to scale: finding employees to hire who have the skills they need. Remember the different stages of growth that we need until we became, again. So here we are a micro company. Until here we are a small company. And here we are a mid-sized company, and here we are already a large company. And again, there are also challenges to go from 250 to 500, from 500 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 5,000. This is the life cycle, right? This is also our life. We start as babies, we grow from kids, and the kind of support that we have is different in each stage. With companies, it's the same. And it's even more complex, because that's not only one person that we need to educate, to feed. It's a lot of people working together with their own views, which is also great, but it's much more difficult. It's the same. The challenge is about thinking about the education policies for the future, about educating people, are the same as the policies to think about how to feed businesses, how to scale up businesses, how to support them in the different stages. So building their leadership capability. So there is a lot of people, and we know this problem very easily, who are one of the early employees, frontline employees, that will become leaders. And as an individual contributor, you need to be very specialized in doing very well one thing. But as manager or as leader, you need to be able to get your results from the other people's job. So it's not about your job. And as successful individual contributors, you are very, very good. You are world-class doing that thing. But now the next game is not about being world-class about doing that thing. It's how you multiply. How you have 5 people or 7 people or 8 people being world-class about what they do, and you are world-class leading them. And then the next job, when you go from year to year, for instance, here you became a manager, here you became a director, which means that you need to manage managers. Here you became a VP, which means that you need to manage directors. Here you became maybe a group or a business unit leader, and eventually you become a CEO. And the skills that you need from each transition to another, leadership capability, leadership development, it's completely different. Again, also as a manager, as a leader, you need to change your mindset completely to go to the next level. You need to unlearn a lot of things and to learn new things. And this is a painful process because we don't like change. And remember, you were successful doing what we were doing before. Why we will change? It's very counterintuitive. Assessing customers in other markets or market. This is one of the challenges of scaling up, not starting up. So let's keep doing missions, but understanding that we are just opening the mindset of the people of startups, helping them to think better, to know another realities, but it will not have impact on the short term. Accessing the right combination of finance. This is also very challenging. There are very few ecosystems where VCs who are able to invest in a Series C round, in a Series D round, in a Series E round. Very few systems who are able to do IPO locally, which again, you will need to find investors in other countries. Again, the reputation problems, again, the credibility problems. And that's why we need to help scale-ups to be promoted everywhere. That's when the scale-up the international missions make all sense. To have the scale-ups going with the government to other countries in the same committee. Also having small startups coming, that's okay, to open up, to inspire them, to groom them, to connect them with the scale-up leaders who can help them and share their experiences. That's a virtuous cycle. Finally, and this one I would say, it's the easiest, but very complex to solve. And I think that's, again, there are very few ecosystems who have done it. And I think that the UK still has a long way to go in that sense, which is, part of the challenge of scaling up is that it's not only the number of employees. This is one of the most sources of complexity, but it's always the different time zones. It's also the different offices. So that's why a lot of companies, until they get to at least 50, 100 people, they prefer to have product, engineering, all the support functions in one place, and then marketing and sales close to the markets where they are selling. And they need flexible rent. Because in 18 months, today I have 25, I need a kind of an office. Tomorrow I have 50, and 12 months later I have 100, and 36 months later I have 250. And how do I find a real estate business who will allow me to have a rent for 6 months with this size and then allow me to go to another office? So the kind of solutions that we are available in the private market, it's not adapted to scale-ups. To startups, that's okay, we all know it's the incubators, it's the co-working spaces, et cetera. They are already flexible to the start. A lot of them, as we know, are not quite sustainable. They need some support also. But yes, if you run well, kind of a co-working space, you can make it, you'll not make a lot of money, but you can make it sustainable at least. But this is one of the problems. I have a vision that I think that's not yet available in the world, which is to create a scale-up campus. So it's a kind of a university campus where we have the different scale-ups. And we have events, you put them together. There is also another interesting stat is, usually when I talk about this, people always say, look, but we have all the scale-ups together, they will start hiring people from each other. What happens is that the standards go up again. So very few, much less people start changing from company to company because the standards are very similar. They are really there because of the vision, the purpose, the leadership. It's not because of more $10 or more 10 bahts that they change from one company to another. So this is really curious. And the way, again, you support each other, use the same networks going to other countries, the same kind of strategies, policies, is much easier. So this is the question that you need to put down today and think in the next 90 days. What percentage of my resources and attention are focused on scale-ups? What can be done to provide more support for companies who have survived the startup phase and are looking to grow? What are some of the key challenges companies face as they look to accelerate growth? And these are the scale-up gaps that you need to address. It's the talent and skills gap. One of them is the skills that the different leaders need, but also the staff, everyone. How do we have this education? How do we adapt the university education, the secondary education, the primary education to have the right skills for this kind of growth, for this stage of the companies? The leadership capacity gap, the market gap, the finance gap, and the infrastructure gap. So everything that we talked about until now, in summary. By the way, any questions? I've been talking. And again, this is counterintuitive. Just providing funding isn't sufficient. We need to work with the right companies. We need to work with the national ecosystem and beyond. We need to work all together. And that's what I've been saying the last sentence. Levels of finance often beyond any one country, 100 million per company. Usually, this is even the amount of investment that has been done in all ecosystem. The amount of funding that a scale-up needs in the late stage is maybe around of 100 million US dollars, which usually it's the amount that was invested ever in an ecosystem in this infancy. So this is the key ingredients of a successful ecosystem. Some lessons learned. Again, I'm just repeating the same thing again in different angles, but big numbers of startups, it's different from big numbers of scale-ups. Do you remember that correlation that ecosystems that are less developed have higher rates of startups than ecosystems who are less developed? So there is no excuse to say we have less startups than another country, we should have less scale-ups. There is no correlation over there, it's the opposite. If you take care of scale-up, startups take care of themselves. The age type of company less relevant than value infused. Scale-ups are not late-stage startups. And we see a lot of micro companies that don't have a scalable business or don't have a scalable mindset in their management team, and they will never become mid-sized companies. So again, more startups, more micro enterprises doesn't mean more mid-sized companies. And we need to repeat this to ourselves because in the next 7 days we will forget this. Because we have been told, we have been taught the opposite for a lot of years. And it's difficult to unlearn what we have been preaching in the last decades to a new reality. Scaling up can be locally contagious. Remember the PayPal mafia graphic? One company, one founding team created 10 or 15 scale-ups, successful, who exited their companies, who completed all the entrepreneurial journey. A small number of scale-ups can. That's the virtual cycle. And there is an advantage of working with scale-ups and with a smaller percentage of companies, is that we can be much more focused and you can know much more the reality than with startups when it's so many companies, right? That's it. So again, aligning the stakeholders and addressing the different gaps. So this is also a good summary of what we have been doing. What can the government do to support scale-up companies further? Will we see the emergence of scale-up incubators like we have with startups? The key recommendations: release data, increase collaboration, improve skills, develop leadership, assist international expansion, champion success stories. This is two very important things that we didn't talk too much, which is we need to know the numbers. We need to know the numbers. For instance, there is a company in Europe, I don't know if it is available here, which is Dun & Bradstreet, who is a company who tracks all the information of the companies. So revenues, funding rounds, everything. So, and you can have access to a report to understand how many companies do you have in each stage, and you can start working with that numbers, right? And you can see also the difference during the last 5 years, and then to plan for a goal in the next 5 years. Let me just get my final point here. If you help a company, here it's still very risky. But if you help a company to go from 50 to 250 employees, you will create 200 jobs. If you help 10 companies, you will create 2,000 jobs. If you help 100 companies, you create 20,000 jobs. If you help 1,000 companies, you create 200,000 jobs. Let's look to the revenues. If you help a company going from 10 to 100, well, let's simplify to 1 to 101. With one company, you create 100 million in terms of GDP. With 10 companies, 1B. Wow. 100 companies, I would need to, it's really big numbers. So it's 10B, sorry. Pretty easy, because this is 1B. We can do the same exercise for these companies. Imagine a company with 3 people. If you help 100 companies with 3 people, how many jobs do you have? 300 jobs. 300 jobs compared to 20,000. These companies are much less than 1 million. These companies have 3 jobs, but these jobs are not paid because the founders don't have any salary in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm being a little bit pessimistic, but in the majority of the cases, that's the truth. So now we have shared the numbers. It's an exercise. It's not on the graphs. We have done it ourselves with our own minds. So this is impact. So first is tracking the numbers to do this kind of exercise. So now your policies are completely measured. My goal is to create 10,000 jobs. My goal is to create an impact of 5 billion in the next 3 years. You can track it. And then you need to be evangelists. That's what we awarded yesterday in the opening ceremony, the evangelist. I found it very curious, and congratulations for that. I've never seen this in other ecosystems, to award people who are evangelizing and sharing the word about how important it is to start up in the country. It's really a noble thing. Congratulations for that. I got very emotional in that moment. So we need to talk, we need to include in the government missions, the scale-ups, to get them projection internationally. So for them to show that they have been with the Prime Minister of China, with the Prime Minister of Singapore, with the Prime Minister of the UK, when they were with the Prime Minister of Thailand. This is important. This gives them reputation. They are really important. This helps doors. This creates trust for the ones who are buying or investing or are providing to them. It turns their life easier if they have a lot of articles on the press. So as much as we are doing today with startups, we need to do the same with scale-ups. That's the good thing about it, is part of the skills that we have been learning about supporting startups are also applied about supporting scale-ups with some differences. So recommendation number 1, release the names of the scale-ups. You already all the information. Recommendation number 2, publicly funded organizations seeking public funding should review and report on the extent to which the top 50 scale-ups in their areas are increasing their turnover and job growth from year to year, with the objective of increasing the proportion of scale-ups with more than 250 employees by 3% by 2025. So here you see that it's measurable, it's clear what we are trying to do, how we will do it. So it's not, about inventing numbers. And let's be realistic. That's what we do in the startup stage. That's what we do in all our incubators, accelerators, science parks. We put there beautiful numbers, right? And that's not your fault. That's not my fault. That's how it works. It's difficult. It's difficult to measure a company that will only get results after 10 years. Everybody forgot. And in the short term, how do I preach? How do I evangelize people to keep doing this? I will need to find out a certain pitch to keep doing it. But here, it can be much more effective pitching. 50% of public funding and promotion currently reserved for entrepreneurship should be directed towards collaborative initiatives based on track record. A minister should be made responsible for reversing the scale-up gap by 2025. A task force appointed to deliver a scale-up report to the Prime Minister every November for the next 5 years. That's what the UK has done. And the report that you have in front of you is the report that the government asked to be made every single year. There is also, let me show you where you can find the reports. So if you go to scaleupinstitute.org.uk/scaleup review 2017, you will have here the forward, the executive overview. You can download, even because what I send is a kind of a summary, a PowerPoint about the results of the first report in 2014. This is a review. It's as you see, a much longer report, which explains everything that I was talking about in much more detail, with much more figures, with much more numbers. So if you want to read this after the workshop with more detail, with more time, and don't try to read it all from one way to another. You need to process all of this information. It's too much information in different bytes, so do it every time. This is a kind of a Bible for scaling up. This is a book that even myself, I read it every week when I'm traveling. It's always with me in my bag. When I have some time, I take another chapter and I read it again. And I always find a new thing that I never figured out before. The same happens with the report. So always taking a lot of learnings, because again, my mind is not very intelligent, so I need to read it a lot of times. Let's come back. So this is the file that I have shared with you. This is the report from Texas that I was seeing that tracks all the Series A, B, and C. There is also seed funding. Let me see, Series A. If you see Series A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 20 Thai Series A companies. Let's look to Series B and C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 20 in Series A stage, 10 in Series B and C stage. So see, there is a group, as I was telling you, that I thought it was not more than 30 companies. So this should be your champions, your pilots, 30 companies. And then the non-tech world, I'm sure, and again, we'll need to find a kind of a Dun & Bradstreet. We'll track the numbers and tell us how many scale-ups we have that are non-tech, who fits the criteria that I shared in the first slide of the presentation. And then you would say, okay, it's 0.4%, and then the total amount of Thai companies are this, and this is the amount of scale-ups. And these are the names of the scale-ups, and they are located in these regions, in these cities, and we can do a program in each region, close to each university, close to each science park, and we can, again, scale ourselves, supporting scale-ups, having different programs, as we have done with startups, right? We try to be very close to them. So this is a report of Texas, so your job, not mine. This is an example. This is a website, dealroom.co. So the one that I was telling you tracks very well the non-tech world. So it's the typical data company or knowledge company that, for instance, helps companies if you want to sell to a company worldwide and you don't know what is their credit score, and you need to take, you hire this company to provide you data if they have any debt towards another client, so it would be risky to you, or you should ask them to pay in advance because there is a risk of not being able to receive, to collect the payment. So this is the same company who tracks, to know the credit score, they need to track all the details about worldwide companies. They can build a report for you. This one is completely dedicated in Europe to track tech companies, which is a different animal in a certain way, because there is the capital raised. It's not only about revenues, it's a little bit more complex to track. And as you see, this is another thing that will happen in your country too, which means that maybe more than 50% of the companies would be on the capital. This happens worldwide. If we look regionally, 50% of the companies in the region are in 2 to 3 countries. So it's always the Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule. 20% of the causes generate 80% of the results happening. Where will you start scaling up? For instance, in the close countries in the region, where's the higher amount of scale-ups? Because they are the better environment to scaling up. Of course, it depends on the vertical. Of course, it depends on the business model. Of course, it depends on the client. Okay, but would be a good way to go. Where do I go to international mission? Where are the most investment raised? What is the goal of international mission? Is to raise funds, is to find clients, is to access the international pool. How do I think about making it easier for companies to attract employees who are impassioned with the vision of the company and would like to move to Thailand to work for these scale-ups? Because the majority of these leaders are not in Thailand, because we have 30 venture-backed tech companies in this stage, which means that maybe some of them are doing this for the second, third time, but the majority are doing this for the first time. So they don't have the talent pool available. The majority of them, we know, the 30 companies, only 3 or 0.31 will become a 100 million company in terms of probabilities. Of course, we all hope that they do not correlate with the metrics and that we get 10 or 15 out of the 30. We know it's very difficult. But if we work with them, we can increase the probabilities, I'm sure. So this is the number of rounds in Europe. So in 2017, the United Kingdom has 959 funding rounds. France, 778 rounds. Germany, number 3, 490 rounds. Sweden, 414. Spain, 387. Israel, 314. Netherlands, Italy, Russia. Let's look to smaller countries in Europe. As you see, United Kingdom, it's about 60 million in population. France, 60 million too. Germany, 80 million. Sweden, 10 million people. Spain, 40 million. Israel, 5 million. Netherlands, 16, 18, 20 million, I think. Italy, 60 million. It's doing quite bad in terms of the VC investment per capita. It's a very good metric to use, VC investment per capita. So it's to divide the number of VC investment per the population. So now you can compare the metric. If not, you can't compare absolute numbers. So it's a kind of the per capita effect. So now let's look to another numbers. And then you see countries like Norway, like Ireland, Austria, even Portugal, 33. You see the huge gap even inside the region? The same happens in Southeast Asia. The same happens in Latin America. Even inside the US, it happened. And that's the next point. Let's compare now the cities inside the country to see if the same effect, the Pareto rule, also applies. Okay, let me just go to cities. London, number 1. 482. Do you remember the number for the UK? 959. Let me repeat. 480. It's 50% of the funding rounds are in one city. I'm sure that the same happens here with Thailand and Bangkok. Paris. 297, let's look to the country. 778. It's less concentrated than in the UK, almost 1/3. Let's look to Germany. Berlin, clearly 200, which is, again, a little bit less than 50%, 40%, which correlates again. And I was showing you the numbers of rounds. We can look to the amount of the investment. 7.4 billion in the UK, 3 billion in Israel, 2.9 billion in Germany, 2.6 billion in France. These metrics are in euros, but it's close to US dollars. So you see now the difference between the top leaders. So the UK made a report because they are not happy with the scale-up gap, and they are the ones who are performing better in Europe. By far. By far. Let me show now. From the 7.4 billion, 4.4 billion are in London, which is much more than 50%. And now I will show you another graph. 4.5, you see the kind of tools that it is to have this data to work with? That's the same that we need in Thailand. So now we can see online, always updated, all the information about the ecosystem, and we can work with numbers, and we can design programs and policies to support with real numbers to measure things. And in that way, it's again, what we tell in the accelerators, we need to take metrics of everything. If not, we can't improve, we can't manage. It's the same for us. So let's look for maybe the quarter 2, as it's not ended yet. Let's look to the quarter 4, London, inside London. Quarter 4, 1.5 billion. $1.5 billion, quarter 4 of 2017. First round, Series E, transfer-wise, 208 million, one company. True Phone, 250 million. Oak North Bank, 100 and, okay, let's make it easy. 150. Orcar Therapeutics, 110 million. And look to the amount to the amounts of the funding. If we look to the Thai funds in the Series B, the amount will be much lower. We are just in the top 4. Oh, I will not see the numbers, sorry. I think that now. Can you read still the numbers? No. Just to, and now? Difficult yet. And now? Still difficult. It works now? I see. I will need to go to the normal view. Okay, let's go to another. Oops. Monzo. 60, I think it's 60. Then 50. Then 40, 40, 40. 36. Let's say 30. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Cool. This is the top 10 of the quarter. Let's say this is 300 million to make it easy. Okay. Let's just start by the first top 4 or the top 5. Let's go to the top 5. 300, 550, 700, 800. Okay, let's say 900 million to make it easy. The top 5 accounts for more than 50% of the funding rounds. It's crazy, it's crazy. Let's see a very developed ecosystem like the UK. You see, the amount still of 10 millions in a quarter. This is just a quarter. Lower rounds of Series B, 5 million, etc. It also happens. Seed rounds of 2 million. Okay, let's make our life easier and look to, how can I look to the number 1.5? Okay, I need to go back to the funding heat map to go to cities, then to change the view to the number of rounds, to enter in London, and to go to the last quarter. It still don't show me. Okay, but I can go here. Just a minute, sorry, change view, United Kingdom. Okay, I can put it quarterly, cities, number of rounds. Do you see the number of rounds? In the quarter 4, London, 128. Which means that 10% of this, it's 13 rounds. Which means that 10% of the companies are raising funds over 50%. 80-20 rule, again. You see the impact. You see the impact that we can create. And now where I think that we need to do the break in a certain amount because I still want to talk about the programs that we have been developing. And I need to change now to the PowerPoint. quick break. Sorry, guys, I know that is too many information, but I'm trying to leverage the time that I have to give you as much value as I can. Please feel free to email me after the session if you want more information about anything. Okay, celebrate Scale Up local governments. Celebrate Scale Up growth events in your city with the media. Invite Scale Up leaders to share their experience with students, for instance, to inspire them in the beginning of the life cycle, entrepreneurial journey. Celebrate new customer wins and help create new ones. Encourage local universities to offer courses to Scale Up leaders. So it's kind of creating momentum. Every day, celebrate something that is happening towards the big goal. Don't wait for the end of the quarter, for the end of the month, for the end of the week. Celebrate. Keep celebrating. Keep telling what is being done. If not, it seems that we are all out of what is going on. So it's the kind of, we all love sports. Do you imagine to see a match without a score? A lot of times that's what we are doing with the businesses and with our own organizations. We don't have the score, and nobody sees the score. Where is the excitement? Do you imagine to see a match of any sport that you enjoy a lot, and everyone is playing, but without score? There is no passion, right? There is no purpose of what I'm doing. It's okay, it's cool to play without score, but yeah. Celebrate new customer wins. Encourage local universities to offer courses to Scale Up leaders. Meet with a selection of Scale Up leaders every month for 3 hours. Persuade real estate leaders to offer Scale Up friendly terms. You remember what we discussed about the needs from one stage to another. Shine a light on our most successful Scale Up leaders and their companies rather than only startups. The 30 companies that we have shown, Series A, B, and C Thai companies. We should have, in the next opening ceremony, the Scale Up Award, not only the Startup Award, the Scale Up Award to start promoting this. The Scale Up Award in your region, the Scale Up Award of your alumni in your tech park center, in your science park, in your incubator, in your accelerator. Profiling successful Scale Up entrepreneurs at key milestones to inspire others. Reviewing and holding to account initiatives and policies in entrepreneurship. Are they about starting or growing businesses? Are they actually providing evidence to support their claims? What is the cost? This is another, I was talking about the impact on revenues and on jobs. What we can do to measure our programs is to what is the cost per job created. So your budget for a program, imagine for 10 scale-ups, it's 500K, 10 scale-ups, which means 30K per company. Are you following me? 300K for a program for 10 scale-ups, which means it's 30K of investment per company. Let's imagine that this company goes from 50 to 100 employees after 3 years or after 24 months after the program, which means that it will create 50 employees each, so which means that the 10 companies would create 500 jobs. 500 jobs. So which means that, let's say that it's 600 to make it easy. So the 500K dividing to 600 jobs, so each so it's, let's say that it's $500 per job, our cost. And now we can start measure even the effectiveness of our programs. Okay, the first edition of the program, it costed me 200K, or let's say, okay, it's 3K to create a job. In my second edition, I was much more effective. It was 1.5K per job. What happened? Because I selected better the candidates? What happened? Okay, and my goal is to get to create a job with 1K per job. So it's quite measurable what you are doing, the way you are allocating your resources, and how you are allocating in terms of your budget, and what is the economic impact in terms of job growth and GDP growth. Are they collaborative? Okay, so it's more a qualitative. Another opportunities for schools and universities, entrepreneurship in curricula, entrepreneurs on board of governors. For instance, involve the entrepreneurs in the local institutions. Again, the science park, there is an advisory board with scale-up leaders that are being consulting. In the universities, too. So, and you collect the practical experience, how to support them, and they are insiders. We are not guessing about what they need. We have someone representing them who is living what they are living. And by the way, it would be important also to have someone from a startup also in that committee to help us think about the policies. Okay, I'm very sorry, but I can't go to the same what we can do for large corporates. Let's go to the last slide. European ecosystems are best at reaching a global customer base. For startups in Europe, 20.7% of their customers come from outside of the continent, whereas the average for all other regions is 12.8%. And we think that we know why. It's because Europe has a lot of countries with small populations, and we all very different languages, which means that you are, in the beginning, already exporting since almost day 2 or 3, because, for instance, if you start in Portugal, you have 10 million people. How do you grow, scale a business inside the country? It's impossible. And if you look to the left, to the right, you have Spain with 40 million people. You speak Spanish, so not Portuguese. Then if you go up, it's the UK, 60 million people. You speak English. So if you go to France, you speak French, 60 million. If you go to Germany, you speak German, 80 million. So which means that it's very difficult to scale in Europe, and it's one of the problems and why we created also the EU. And we are trying to create a common regulation, the same as is happening with you with the Asian economic region. So employee stock options are more widely used in the United States. This is another point that is very important. And regulation is also very important for this, so the government should be working on this. Among American ecosystems, 42% of startups offer stock option plans to all their employees, so they feel much more empowered, much more committed. They have the skin on the game. They want the company to perform, and they also can become millionaires at the end of the process, not only the founders, compared to an average of 22% in the rest of the world. This is likely related to differences in tax law. This is very important. A good thing about Asia-Pacific ecosystems, advisors are most heavily used by startups here. Startups in the Asia-Pacific region have 48% more advisors with equity than the rest of the world. So these are things where Europe is playing very well, where United States are playing very well, and where Asia-Pacific region are also playing very well. So we are an organization who specialized in scale-ups and supporting organizations who promote entrepreneurship, so different players in the ecosystem, and that's it. So we help the supporting organizations with all these things, how to promote a scale-up ecosystem with the different measures, and also the scale-up companies themselves. We have an online program and offline programs in person, typically 6 months to 12 months, the offline, or the in-person one, and the online, it's always available for any company who wants to join wherever it has located, and that's it. But I will share you a little bit more about Scale Up Academy as an example of a program about how to promote Scale Up ecosystems. You also have the brochure available about the workshop of today for supporting organizations, and also the workshop of tomorrow. It would be for the scale-ups. I will talk about the methodologies about how to successfully scale up a company, namely the methodology in this book of Scaling Up that we work directly with Vern Arnish, the author of the book, who worked with MIT in the United States. A very good relationship. And so if any of you would like to join the workshop tomorrow, please feel free to join. It will not be too much for how to promote the scale-up ecosystem, but it will give you an idea about what are the tools available to support scale-ups. So you would see that I will be talking to them, but you would see how a kind of a workshop of one day, again, it will be very summarized, very intense, because typically this program is 6 months and not one day. This is just a workshop, a kind of a flavor of what are the possibilities. So again, please feel free to reach out to me. I've shared the contacts on the slide, on the previous slide, but it's easy, mike@scaleupacademy.io. So it's .io, not .com, .io. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for asking for the presentation. So this is also just to wrap up the first part with some numbers about your region. This is a report from Magic in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, who says that data from World Bank analyzed by Endeavor Insight shows that scale-ups in Southeast Asia account for only 14% of all companies, but create 77% of the net new jobs. So it correlates with everything that we've been saying this morning. A scale-up is a company, okay, we already know this, we have already discussed this. The importance of scale-ups and the rise of their terminology can be found in the study of the World Economic Forum, which found that not all startups make it big, but the ones that do greatly impact society by means of new technology, services, and increased employment. There is an interesting article, I think that it was in March already, that Singapore Budget 2018 helped SMEs scale to compete globally. So it's also the focus of Singapore in the region to promote scale-ups. I know that it was one of the responsibles of Singapore that has been in Startup Thailand last year, delivering a keynote about what Singapore has done to promote scale-ups. So this is our online program. It's available for any scale-up company in the world. So we have different sessions about different topics every month. For instance, about how to scale engineering teams, how to scale product teams, how to scale marketing teams, how to scale sales, how to scale operations, how to expand to specific markets or to specific regions. And what we do is to bring the best tech companies in the world to advise the ones who are scaling now. The internet is working well? Yes? Because it seems that, okay, it's coming. Okay, as you can see, we have Alipay in the guest mentors, Dropbox, we have the French unicorn, Drive.ai, we also work on LinkedIn, Google, Uber, Apple, SendGrid, Tencent, Slack, Skyscanner, the CEO of Crunchbase, the VP of Customer Success, and also the CEO of Zoom, which has 1,000 employees already. These two companies, Delivery Hero and HelloFresh, are German companies who IPO'd already last year. Again, these are just some of the mentors. Get from Israel, which is an Israeli unicorn. So we have the best Zalando, the best tech companies in all regions in our platform, and our mentors come to support our scale-up company. So this is the first benchmark of an online program to support scale-ups. That's part of our core business. So how it works, they have different sessions every week, and anyone in the company, typically the middle management and the top management, can join the sessions. In the first 10 minutes, for instance, this is the VP of engineering at Reddit, a unicorn company in the US from Silicon Valley. Let me just give you a flavor of the first 10 minutes of the session. The video.
Losing control. And it's really just to talk about my experience here at Reddit.
Some quick stats on Reddit. I don't know if you guys are on Reddit or not. It's a really cool site. I'm not sure how popular it is in Europe. I hope it's really popular. It's the fourth largest website in the United States. We've got about 325 million MAU, 1.1 million communities. This year we changed a lot. We got all new. Last year we changed a lot. We got all new executive team. And we changed our product vision to make the site much more welcoming. And part of that required growing the engineering team extremely fast. So we grew from 40 to 130 engineers.
Usually the session has the talk in the first.
The reason this is important,
again, the members
several years back,
which is also another source, very interesting. So then it will give you much more specific as you can see
VD all come in. And then within Edge product and design, some of those responsibilities teased apart as well. For Reddit, the important one was teasing apart the difference between products managers and engineering managers.
From 100 to 250,
if you're at a really small firm, you probably have this role called program manager.
Teams,
and
so typically with
this
product,
is basically
with
some, like
data,
usually
with
a
design,
PM who's
all in teams of
simultaneously
5 to
running
7
scrums
managed
and doing all
for
the
different
customer
managers.
work. As you scale up,
That's a big shift
you want
usually
to
from
move to a
this
world
stage
where product
to this one.
managers are
It's
responsible
another
for
crisis.
customer
So usually you
vision
face a
and
crisis
strategy,
here for
and
the
your
reasons,
end
another one
managers
here,
are responsible
and another one
for
here.
execution.
So there is a lot
That
of
took
crises
little
that we
bit
need
of
to
time tease apart, but it is sort of fundamental if you
to
want to
solve
scale.
in the different transitions.
After doing those two things, we ended up
this
with
is the example of the
Reddit's
talk.
first org chart.
By the way, these talks are all available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to the YouTube and you look to Scale Up Academy, you'll find there a lot of talks for the first 10 minutes of the session. And then the next 15 minutes of the session, which is a Q&A, the members of the companies, who are a maximum of 5 companies on the call, ask questions to Nick, the VP of Engineering.
So the question was like, you're moving from a tech organization organized around technologies to a product organization, which is a really, really good thing, because it means that you're making the appropriate scaling decisions.
By the way, just an example, this is a company from Spain. This is a company, oops.
I don't know if you guys can see my screen now, but
yeah, is using the capabilities of Zoom, which is the conference call that we use, and it's putting the whiteboard to start doing some kind of the same that I've done with the whiteboard, but online.
Build like a house
so it's quite interesting. Is now drawing and working in the collaborative tool.
Boxes along with this one long horizontal
what I was
box.
saying about
okay. Shared.
It was a company from Spain, another one from Portugal, another one from Hungary and Germany. We are very strong in Europe, and we have also some members in Asia and
what
in
this
the US.
indicates is that on the bottom, these shared teams,
the goal of the Scale Up Academy online is to be really in all regions. Step by step, of course.
You have to kind of decide
but inbound,
in your
we are
company,
already
is there
open to any
specialized
company in the
knowledge
world
or
wants to
specialized
join
skill sets that are
sessions.
so
We will
important
just need to adapt the time zones, of course,
they need to be
to the different
in a way that enables the other product teams to be successful.
This is an example. And so in a summary, you see here are the different sessions of the month about different topics. For instance, on May 4th, on 4 p.m. at London time, which would be 10 p.m. Here in Thailand, we discussed scaling product with the co-founder and CTO at Colibra, which is a Series D company. This is just a summary of his bio. Then we have another one about Martin, which is the Israeli unicorn, head of design of Zenefits, also a unicorn in Silicon Valley. So you see also another unicorn, which is original from the US with offices in London. So it's all the best companies in the world who are available, and the different executives, the VP of engineering, the VP of marketing, the VP of sales, able to provide a talk during 10 minutes. And then the next 15 minutes, the 5 members who join just ask questions about their bottlenecks, their issues, and they are supported. So this happens every month. And typically, we also ask what are their challenges for the next quarter in order to bring the guest mentors who can add more value to them in that specific amount of time. Typically, again, it's for middle management and top management, so all the management layers, which doesn't mean that we don't allow frontline employees to come to the sessions. We do, but we would say that we add much more value for management layers because this is all a tool looking to the gaps about leadership development. It's a leadership development tool and access to the scale-up talent pool worldwide to the best tech companies in the world. We also address the market gap in the way that some of the sessions are about scaling to specific regions or specific countries, and also the funding gap in the way that we invite some of the best investors in the world like Sequoia, Vanrock, Axel, Index Ventures. You know, all the best investors are also available to support them. So the only thing that we don't do is the scaling infrastructure because we don't have a scale-up company. I would love to do it, as you know, and I've already shared this morning. I would say the access to talent, we promote some events, which is the Scale-Up Heroes, which is a kind of a meetup locally that we do in different places. And we also have, if we want to follow in our website, the Heroes podcast. So the Heroes podcast is a podcast online that is streamed via Facebook Live. And in this moment, we are much more having companies, not the ones who have scaled up. These videos are on the YouTube channel, the ones who scaled up, the unicorns. These are the companies who are scaling now. So typically post Series A, B, and C, who are still scaling up. And this is a way, again, of one of the policies of giving them visibility, giving them credibility to investors to find them, for customers to find them, for talent to find them. And it's a kind of a policy that it also supports the access to talent. So there is access to talent, leadership development, access to markets, access to capital, and the only thing that we don't have solved with this product is the infrastructure gap. So the kind of the offices and rents that we discussed. So the idea is that these podcasts will keep going each time more global. So to have also the podcast for Asian companies and for Latin American companies, for African companies. Again, we are going step by step implementing this program. So this is, as I was telling you, an example. Then on Medium, if you look for Scale Up Academy, you'll also find some articles with the key takeaways or summaries of the sessions. The talks are open. Some parts of the Q&A are also open to everybody and free to watch on YouTube, on Medium. But the 15 minutes Q&A, the majority is only for members, of course, because it's about their private issues and so on, and they pay a membership fee to be part of the program. So it's a private company in a certain way who supports scale-ups without any public funding in that sense. So that's it. So first, that was the first example, scaleupacademy.io. Please feel free to ask questions. Do you have any questions about the first example of a benchmark of what can be done as a program in this kind of online and global program to support scale-ups? Was it all clear? Yeah, sure.
Since you're building the scalability of the companies, so would you mind if I ask the range of clients that you're involved with? Are they startups or are they SMEs or the combination of them? Because most of the word scalability are plugged in the startup companies, but in some SMEs, traditional SMEs, they might feel like reluctant to scale up themselves because it's the non-tech one. So,
this product at this stage, just applying my own philosophy of going step by step and being focused on each stage. This is just at this stage, my vision is to be always also for the industry 4.0 and for non-tech companies, but at this stage, it's just for tech companies and venture-backed tech companies. So typically, we don't have even bootstrapped companies. So we create this criteria to be laser focused and to make it completely global. But I would say that after we are global in this segment, we will start approaching also the non-tech world. As also at that stage, I think that the non-tech world will also be a little bit more open to share, because that's one of the main challenges that we have in that segment. They are always afraid that someone will steal their magic formulas to run the business. And I think that on the startup stage, we all figure out that execution is different than the idea. So yes, it's part of the vision. But I will show you a second program where we have linked which is an in-person program, so more easy for the industry 4.0 that will address that segment. Thank you for the question. So any more questions about the first example? Okay. Let's go to the second one. So Porto, as I told you, is where we are based in Portugal. It's the second largest city in Portugal. So we are talking about 1,500,000 people. So 1.5 million to be easier. So it's a small ecosystem compared to the UK, to London, Berlin, Paris, Singapore, even Bangkok, etc. And the first idea that we should say, oh, we don't have the size to run a scale-up program. We are still on the startup stage. So this shows that this is not the reality. And what we have done was to select, oh, sorry, this is in Portuguese, and it should be a little bit challenging to you to read it. Just changing for English, okay. So, and we created, we selected two segments, so this is the case. The first segment are the venture-backed scale-ups, and this was the criteria that we used for this first edition of the program, which is companies with more than one, welcome to this slide. Companies with more than 1 million collected in funding or business revenues above the 500K euros. So, or US dollars. So this is the European definition of a scale-up. I already told you that there are another definitions, and we can be much more restrictive and have programs for the different stages. For instance, there is another example. The UK has a program for Series A-B, which is called Upscale UK, and has another one to go from Series D to the IPO, which is the Future 50. But you know the numbers that London has with that exercise. Every quarter, they have a lot of companies to do a lot of programs, and they can start. It's the same as we have done with startups. We started for everybody, then we started segmenting it. So with scale-ups, it's the same. When the segment is small, we need to do it all together because we don't have enough companies to segment it. As much as it keeps developing, we start being much more specialized. So let's help you to go from 1 million to 10 million. To 10 million to 50 million, from 50 million to 100 million, from 50 employees to 20. So we start having segmented programs, and then we can go to the verticals, just for food, just for IoT, so etc. And then the second segment, and this, I think it is not available, I don't want to lie, but it's not available anywhere in the world. It was the first experiment that we have done in Porto. So a small city can be a source of a lot of innovation if all the stakeholders are committed to really think big and go forward, which we applied the definition of a scale-up that we have seen in the first slide of the presentation this morning. So a company over 10 employees with a growth rate over 20% in the past 3 years, and we applied another 2 extra layers of a criteria, which was annual revenues between 5 and 50 million, and level of export equal or superior to 15% of the turnover. Why? Because we wanted to see that the company is already committed to go internationally. So if there is 0 exports, it means that the company is not really committed yet to go internationally, and we wanted to create more impact on the ones that are already exporting, how to scale them up international. Again, this was a program to address these two segments in these stages, but we can then segment this and work on the different stages as we have discussed it, because the pains in each stage will be very different. And how did we, so these are the two segments. Any questions about the non-tech and tech segments? Non-tech, we also call it Industry 4.0 nowadays. It's the sexy term nowadays. But it is only high growth SMEs, non-tech. So this was the program. We brought for a 2-day workshop Vern Arnish, the guy who is the kind of the father of scaling up, who has been running these programs for the last 30 years. So that's the one I'm in touch every single week, discussing how we can support scale-ups. So it was a 2-day workshop where he discussed all the methodology with 15 companies. Then we made another workshop, and here is the combination of the first workshop about marketing, one of the functions. And what we have done was to invite Omar Mohout, who was a successful entrepreneur who also exited a company based in Brussels, in Belgium, but who also has a kind of a teacher skills in a certain way that he can give you tools. Because usually entrepreneurs don't like too much to share tools, they like to share their experiences. So we tried the combination, because we really wanted to have in the program, like in the online program, the companies or the executives of the companies who really scale it up before. We didn't want to have theoretical people talking too much about tools, but people who have done things before. And that's why we have done this combination, trying to always have the trainer with a background who has started or scale up a business, plus Elif Somersi is the head of customer experience at Deliver Hero, which is a German unicorn, backed by Rocket Internet and Zalando, which is also kind of the first wave of unicorns in Europe. And she has been sharing their experience. So typically it's a morning, which is much more about providing tools, and the afternoon, 1 hour, which is much more inspirational from a company who has scaled before, who is also open for Q&A. And then in the rest of the afternoon, you have one-on-one meetings for each company. So there is a general presentation. One, it's a little bit more long about the tools. Another one of the entrepreneur, it's shorter. And then there is one-on-one to both people. So each company of the batch has the opportunity to sit down with them and ask specific questions about their issues. So this is the idea, the way we run the workshop. The same happened to the other workshops, so about sales, people, execution, finance. And a curiosity, you are asking me, so you are teaching the same for a non-tech company that you are teaching to a tech company? In terms of the methodologies, yes, the tools are the same. How do you attract, how do you retain people? Number one part of the methodology. Number two, how do you define the right strategy to scale up? Number three, execution. How do you run your daily stand-ups, your weekly meetings, your monthly meetings, your quarterly meetings, your annual meetings? How do you align everybody to execute the strategy and to be focused? And number four, cash. So growth, you know very well the methodology. Growth sucks cash. So how can we preserve the cash in the business and create cash? So how can we pay later? How can we collect before? What are the payments terms for our services? So there is a lot, and there are different tools that we can use to sit down and write down and then to track all the metrics. So it's much more about the methodology. And then we went more in detail, for instance, here on people, on execution, also on the cash side, here on finance. So in terms of strategy, in marketing, we approach it much more in detail. Also, strategy, Vern believes that there is no marketing strategy equals strategy. So that's what he believes. I would say that in a second edition, I would add product and engineering and design and data, so the multifunctional teams. Again, these are programs like the ones we have run in the first time with the startups that we need to keep iterating and learning new things and improving and learning from the batch how to be more effective in the jobs that we create with the same amounts of resources. And there is only one way to do it. It's to keep running and to keep failing and improving the process. So this is about the tools. As you see, the workshop of 2 days about the tools. Then in some cases here about strategy, here about people, here about execution, here about cash. We go again to the tools, but we don't stay in the tools of the book. We bring the entrepreneurs who have done this quite successful in marketing, and we bring someone, the VP of marketing, to come from a tech company. We bring the VP of sales, we bring the VP of people, the VP of operations, the VP of finance to explain, the CEO to explain how they have done it and be available, and then the workshop method plus the one-on-one, very tailor-made to each of the companies of the batch. And the way we separated both segments, so this is the kind of the main structure of the program. This is available online. If you go to growthchampions.scaleupporto.pt, you have all this information. And here is an example of how we created 2 different workshops and 2 different speakers for both segments. So networking moments, they are all together, but there are some moments in the program, in the workshops, where we separate them. For instance, for venture-backed tech companies, it made sense how to raise a late-stage round. So here was the VP of Octopus, the partner of Octopus Ventures, which is one of the main VCs in Europe, in the US, also with presence in Singapore. And he has explained how to do it. He has done it several times, invested several times, and also explains how a VC business works, because usually the founders don't understand how the VC business works. So it helps understanding what is the pain of the client, right? And with investors, it's the same. What they want to achieve and how my startup or my scale-up can help them achieve their results of their business. If I can prove them that investing in me, they will achieve their results, it's much easier than please invest in me, please invest in me. No, I need to understand what are your goals, and then, okay, how I will serve your goals. For instance, if I'm talking with you after this session, I want to know what are your number one priority for your science tech park or for your incubator, and then I will try to think what I can help to make you accomplish your goals. I will not sell my goals. I will try to add value to your own goals, and then that's it much more easy to work together, right? So, and Joe Short has a long experience in private equity. So typically the non-tech world doesn't have the kind of scalability that the venture capital firms are looking to. So they are not VC backable. They are scale-ups, but they are not VC backable. But they are private equity backable. So private equity looks for much less risk for a company that they can grow in a short amount of time, putting a certain amount of money and getting a certain amount of results, and then exiting the company in a horizon of 5 years. So it's much less risky than the venture capital industry, which is much more aligned with the non-tech scale-up, which is also much less risky than a tech scale-up. So we have divided, but then the moments of networking, the one-to-ones, could be with both speakers, and they would be feel still together and understand the differences. Do you remember when I was talking about the problems of communication between the both segments? This is a way that, okay, you do this in your company. Oh, you do that. Interesting. And they start exchanging and creating relationships, and we are putting the ecosystem together. Also, in the opening ceremony, then offering saying congratulations to the certificates for the program, and so on, giving visibility to all of them, appearing on the media all together. We created the Skill Up Award for the best tech industry of the year and the Skill Up Award for the best industry 4.0 of the year. A huge gala with a lot of media, with a lot of investors, all the ecosystem, with the prime minister and the president coming, giving the certificates, taking photos, you know, what we have been discussing all this morning. Now the next steps are to keep doing editions and to start segmenting for each of the stages of the business. So second example, and this one I think very innovative in the world in the way that we crossed both segments that I think nobody has the courage yet to try something so difficult. Questions about this number 2 product that is a result of a number of policies that we want to implement in the ecosystem. Again, this product solves leadership development, access to markets, because there is also companies that are coming from different markets and different realities. We try always to have guests that come from Asia, from the US, from Europe, not so much from Latin America and Africa, because usually that's not the number 1 priority of the scale-ups at this stage. But of course we want to include them also in the future. Access to market, so access to capital, then access to talent is much more via visibility, so there is not a recruitment effort, of course, in this program. Scaling infrastructure is not present, of course, in this product too. All right, this is a badge of the companies, so you can even select the venture-backed or the high-growth SMEs. So, and these are the different mentors who joined the program. Here you see that we have hired the kind of Dun & Bradstreet local to find out who are the companies who fulfill the criteria, and then we invited them to come. Another way to do it, so it's also very exclusive for them, right? I was selected to be in the program. I was invited to be in the program because I'm doing great. So we are already celebrating, awarding them with the program because they are doing quite well, which is, again, counterintuitive, because usually we try to support the ones who are doing quite bad, right? So that's it, and we joined 2 organizations, the municipality, which is the Scale Up Portal, and Angie, which is the kind of startup talent in Portugal. There is also a startup Portugal, but it's the kind of the oldest entrepreneurship organization in the country. It was founded in 1986, so 32 years old already. Goes to schools to talk about entrepreneurship as incubators, as accelerators, you know, as a training unit also available, missions, international missions, fairs, verticals. Fashion, for instance, is very strong in the north of Portugal. So, and wanted also to be pioneers again, and that's why the city and the local agency wanted to put Porto as a city who really support scale-ups, and that's how the program is born, with also our knowledge of the Scale-Up Academy. I think that's the number 2 program. What can I show more? Then I was talking about the programs in the UK. I think it's also, and we are already almost on time. Internet seems a little bit slow. You know, 33 of the UK's most promising tech companies joined Upscale UK, which is, as I was telling, the earliest stage of scaling up. There is a brochure, you know, everything with the main mentors. This is something also very important. You need to try a combination of what are the local heroes of the Thai ecosystem with international heroes of the scale-up ecosystem internationally. So trying to have both angles. So in order to not have the excuse, oh, you are bringing a guy from the US. There is much easier than here. No. There is also here a Thai guy who have made it. So don't tell me excuses. It is possible to do this in Thailand. So forget. Work. Less excuses. So it's difficult. We all know. We discussed it this morning. But it is possible. Let me see also if I find out here a video. This is the number 3 example. Upscale UK. Okay, Rio Ferdinand, for the ones who don't know him, it was one of the main players of the UK league, also playing the Champions League, etc., etc. This was the opening video.
Today marks the launch of Upscale. All of the companies here are absolutely incredible.
Was the launch.
It's never been a better time to be involved in UK tech.
Upscale is a program that gives access to some of the world-class coaches that have actually built companies themselves.
Being involved with other people on that same journey and other people who've been through that journey is very important for us at this stage.
Mentoring helps companies grow. It's what made Silicon Valley companies so great, and it's fantastic to see that over here as well.
I wanted to understand and see what it took to win, and I was focused on improving every day, every single day. Am I doing more things than the next guy over there? And that's when I became a leader.
Listening to Rio and listening to all the things that they had to consider to really focus to make themselves the best in what they've done is fantastic.
The ability to sort of keep pushing and keep driving, even when things seem hopeless, even when it feels like you've got nothing left, is crucial. You wouldn't be here unless you had that.
If you work really hard, much harder than everyone else around you, and you're dedicated and you're committed, and you always look for the best people, you will succeed.
If we're going to have a strong tech industry in the UK, we need to go from the seed stage companies to the really world-class companies, and this program helps companies do that.
So this is again the program to go from the 20, I would say the 25 or the 50 to the 100, 150 employees, and then I will show you the one for how to go from the 250 to the 1,000 and IPO.
I've already done it.
Of course, you can IPO with less amount of employees.
I mean, I'm going to need to put these. I can't see without.
But you get what I mean. And this program is called the Future 50, which a company from Portugal, Farfetch, which then shared again the headquarters to the UK because of the access to funding, which the majority of the employees are in the north of Portugal, in Porto. It's Farfetch, was part of both programs, the Upscale UK and the Future 50. So this is, for instance, a video of the applications are open.
There's not many platforms and communities that have got the reach that Future 50 have.
Basically, anybody who means something in the tech world in the UK has been included.
For fund apps to be listed alongside literally household names that I use on a daily basis, it does make you feel good.
The idea was very compelling to me because it creates a central fulcrum to bring together these late-stage tech businesses to share ideas, share learnings. It's a great way to create a Silicon Valley in the UK.
I think the company that we're in is absolutely amazing, both in terms of the companies that have been there before us and our fellow companies on the list this year.
We didn't actually realise how brilliant it is. You've got like-minded people, you can turn to the experts within the community, but also that are made available through the network.
Growth companies need a lot of resources. It's very helpful to get together as a community of people who are going through the same thing, and Future 50 enables that.
There's obviously a lot of change going on at the moment, so that access to government and ability to participate in that debate is really valuable.
To really innovate and to get the support of government and the support of a network of businesses that are really trying to change the way that business is done for consumers.
The really important stuff to us is the access it gives us to other companies of similar size and the voice into government.
There are times when I feel completely out of my depth. So speaking to other people who are going through similar experiences, just seeing them smile and nod is almost enough.
Growing a company feels even more complicated than starting a company. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for your company. This sharing mindset is extremely useful.
They have scaled already for the program. I don't run this program, so I'm okay to share this example. So they are doing it quite well. I think that we saw the ads for the applications.
The Future 50 is the UK's leading programme for late-stage digital businesses. Since the Future 50 began, companies have raised over $5.5 billion collectively. 5 of our alumni have gone on to IPO, and we've seen 23 mergers and acquisitions. 2018 marks the Future 50's 6th year. We introduced 26 new companies from 9 different sectors. App and software development. GVA in IT, software and computer services grew by more than 36% from 2010 to 2015. Introducing FeatureSpace, a machine learning software platform which understands individual behaviors in real time for enhanced fraud detection. Memrise, language learning technology, combining entertainment, world-leading scientific research, AI, and peer-to-peer collaboration. Cybersecurity. The estimated market size of the total cybersecurity sector in 2017 was £3.4 billion. Introducing Darktrace, using machine learning and AI algorithms to detect and respond to cyber threats across digital environments.
So they will keep doing this. You can again
Condeco,
see this on
eBury Partners, EPOS Now, Vesti 18 Cohort, Azimo, Bliss, Bloom and Wild,
This is one of Onfido, one of our clients at
Condeco,
skillupacademy.io, the online
eBury
program.
Partners,
So they went to this
EPOS
6-month
Now,
program and they want an
Vesti
ongoing
Ticket,
program. And they
Gusto,
joined skillupacademy.io to keep
Kano
giving
Computing,
access to their employees,
Lovecraft,
to their management layers,
My Uni Days,
the access to the
On
best
Fido,
practices.
Receipts Bank, Rolly, Spitfire Audio,
As you see, you can also
Super Awesome, Swoon Editions.
You can also use different tools. So ScaleUp can go first to a upscale UK program. Then later on, if everything goes well, we'll go to a Future 50 program. Companies that are in the Future 50 program are also joining the skillupacademy.io for the online program, which is an ongoing program. So there is not only one tool that you should use as a scale-up. There are different tools, and it makes sense to combine them all together. And I think, so just a presentation, I think, just to conclude, that would be interesting to understand what Tech Nation is doing in the UK. So as you see, this is a kind of an umbrella brand, startup talent, this type for the city. which positions again the country, in this case the city, as a vibrant ecosystem for starting up and scaling up. And that's also the purpose of all of you are doing in different parts of the country, to work together to create an umbrella to promote Thailand as the best place to start up and scale up, maybe in the beginning in the region, then in Asia, and then in the world. So I think that's the kind of ambition that all of our ecosystems, wherever we are, should have, because as much as each of the countries improve, as much we all benefit as a society as a whole, also because we are becoming each time more multicultural, more connected. So Portuguese people living and working in Thailand, Thai people working and living in Portugal. So it's all connected. So if one ecosystem gets better, the world benefits. So we should not be competing. Again, we should be collaborating. So that's it. Thank you so much. In the afternoon, we'll be much more on a brainstorming exercise. What could be done in the next 90 days? Again, I don't want to be just here to give an interesting talk. I want results out of this workshop. And if we could help to think what we can do in your circumstances, in your context, please let me know. So in the afternoon, we'll do this kind of 1 hour, 1 hour and a half exercise where your participation would be much more critical, because I will not be showing nothing. It will be much more about addressing your questions and trying to understand what can be done in the next 90 days for you. So during lunch, we'll have 1 hour for lunch, so we should be back at 2 p.m. here. I would like you to start thinking what are the main questions that you would like to ask, and what are your plans for the next 90 days after what you have heard this morning. I know a lot of things to process, but what is the single step that you can execute in the next 90 days to adopt some of these policies to promote your scale-up ecosystem? That's the main question for the afternoon workshop. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mike.